and running with the aforementioned Zach Lowe and the undefeated Mark Spears. We'll get to you guys in just a bit, but first, we got to get to the news out of Brooklyn. And Kyrie Irving is still unable to practice with the Nets since their return to Brooklyn, given the uncertainty around his vaccination status. With the season less than 2 weeks away, the Nets remain unclear if Kyrie will take part in team operations during home stands. We now welcome in our senior NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski. And before training camp opened, Sean Marks said he felt confident that eventually everyone would be able to participate this season. Now, 2 weeks later, what is the feeling around the Nets and how they're planning to approach Kyrie's situation?
Cassidy, the Nets did have optimism, that Kyrie Irving would get vaccinated and be able to participate the whole way. But that didn't happen, and it hasn't happened yet. And, Brooklyn is preparing for the possibility that they'll have to make a decision about Kyrie Irving's status with the team if he was only going to be a part-time player, if he's not going to be able to play at the Barclays Center or be able to play at Madison Square Garden in the next couple dates against the Knicks this season. That would they want him just as a part-time player who came in and out and joined the team on the road and then had to be away from the team at home? And so that is a possible decision that they're going to have to make if Kyrie doesn't get vaccinated. And, he'll start to lose game salary, perhaps as much as $380,000 a game, beginning with their preseason opener or their next preseason game on Friday against Milwaukee and Brooklyn. And so, listen, there's still hope that he will get vaccinated, but short of that, it is a very difficult scenario for this organization in the short term with Kyrie Irving and then the longer term. And so, this is certainly going to be the story around this team until Kyrie Irving either gets vaccinated or makes it clear that he is not going to do that at all this year. Yeah, definitely a interesting development out of Nets camp. And we'll get Zach and Mark's comments on this story in just a bit. But before the show, Woj, you tweeted that the NBA will continue an adjusted policy in its drug testing this season. What more can you tell us? Yeah, the Players Association and the NBA, they had to come to a number of agreements on the protocols around COVID this season for vaccinated, unvaccinated players. They shared those protocols with the players today. Much of it's been reported. But one thing that was in that memo was that, like the Orlando restart and then all of last season, 2021, players will not be tested for marijuana. They'll continue to be tested for more significant for other drugs, for performance-enhancing drugs. But although marijuana is in the collective bargaining agreement, it is prohibited. There will not be random tests for players this season. And so, we'll see what the next collective bargaining agreement looks like when it comes to marijuana. But this will be another season now that players will not be randomly tested for it. Interesting. Well, a lot of news going on, so stay right there, Woj. We'll be right back to you. I want to bring in Zach and Mark for reaction on the Kyrie Irving story. Mark, the Nets have been outwardly supportive of Irving's process, but what do these reports of the team unwilling to bend all the way, for example, not moving their practices for Irving, tell you, Mark?
Well, what it tells me is that it's bigger than you. I remember when I covered the Denver Nuggets and Nick Van Exel, he convinced Antonio McDyess to sign this 6-year, $67 million deal in 1999. 2 years later, Van Exel asked for a trade, ends up getting a trade to Dallas in 2002, but McDyess is left behind. And ultimately, he ended up getting a trade too. And years later, I talked to Van Exel, and he said, you know what, one of my biggest regrets, if not the biggest in my career, is I convinced McDyess to sign, and then I asked to get out. And in the Kyrie situation, he convinced Durant to come there. He convinced Harden to come there. He convinced Steve Nash to come there. It's bigger than you. It affects more than you. It affects you from a medical standpoint with your teammates and with the league, and it affects your team. And these guys came there for you. So ultimately, I wonder down the line, will he have these same regrets that my stance, and it's his prerogative to have his stance, but ultimately it's bigger than him, and it's really, really affecting this team that has the biggest championship aspirations.
Zach, your thoughts? I mean, Irving could lose game checks approximately $380,000 for every home game he misses.
Do you ever think Sean Marks is like, even in like when he lays down to go to sleep, do you ever think he thinks to himself, it was kind of nice when we were like a frisky 42-win team with D'Angelo Russell and Joe Harris and Karis LeVert. We were like the feel-good story of the NBA. Look, this is a huge story. As Woj said, they were optimistic before the season. I kept hearing, it'll happen, it'll happen, it'll happen. It hasn't happened. The idea of Kyrie Irving as a part-time player, an away game only player, an away game practice player. I mean, like, what are we even talking about? Is that tenable? I don't think the Nets have even had a conversation where they've concluded, is that tenable and is it not tenable? Can you imagine if they start having trade discussions about Kyrie Irving if he does not get vaccinated and become a full-time player? What do those conversations look like? What's his trade value? What do the other teams think? This is an absolutely unprecedented situation. As Kevin Durant commented today at practice, there's still hope that it resolves itself. I mean, hopefully sooner rather than later for the Nets' sake. But this is a team that is the overwhelming favorite to win the championship, fully loaded. Without him, they may still be the slight favorite to win the championship. Eye of the beholder on that one, but they're right there with the Bucks, maybe the Lakers. They lose all their margin for error when one of their stars is out.
Yeah, in terms of this is tenable, the team will be away from home for only one day the rest of the preseason, Monday for a game at Philadelphia. And look, with a 6-game homestand starting the second week of the season, he'll be away from his teammates for 11 days before he can work out with them again. And then during one stretch in November and December, the Nets are home for 20 out of 26 days. So whether or not this is tenable is going to be an ongoing question. We're not only on Kyrie watch this season, but we're also on Ben Simmons watch. And let's bring Woj back in now. It feels like this story is in limbo between a rock and a hard place. And Woj, what updates can you give us on the standoff between Ben Simmons and the Sixers?
Well, we'll start here, Cassidy. Philadelphia still wants Ben Simmons to come in, report to the team, and play. Ben Simmons has not agreed to do that yet, and he has remained resistant to that idea. Philadelphia has been talking to teams on deals, even here in recent days. A handful of teams, that I know of that they've been in communication with. But, Philly's vision of a trade for Ben Simmons remains. They've got to get back a fairly elite player in return. This is a unique case of a contending team trading a star player. Usually we see rebuilding teams. Philly can get a great package of draft picks and maybe a good young player or two. That's not what they're after here. They've got to get back a significant player for Ben Simmons. And right now, I think that's not there in the marketplace for them. I think there's a sense they may have to wait until December 15th when the players who are free agents this summer or sign extensions can become eligible for trades. They are listening. They are talking. But Philly remains with a high asking price, understanding they're in Joel Embiid's prime right now. They have to get back a really significant player for Ben Simmons.
Yeah, time may feel like it's standing still when it comes to a trade, but that fine money is not. Woj, thank you so much, as always, for your insight and reporting. All right, Simmons' contract calls for him to be paid 25% of his salary on July 1st, another 25% on October 1st, and the rest in 12 installments starting November 15th. The $8.25 million due at the start of October has been placed in escrow, and Philly will deduct $360,000 from that for every game he misses, including the preseason. All right, Zach, you have a great Low Post podcast with Bobby Marks right now talking about the candidates, if you will, for Simmons. Who do you think is the leader in the clubhouse right now?
I don't think there even is a clubhouse. I think they're constructing the clubhouse. I think there might be a foundation for it. I don't think anyone's lining up to get in the clubhouse yet. I think it's empty right now. I don't sense that there's been a deal. We use these football analogies. It's on the 10-yard line. It's on the 5-yard line. I don't think there's been a deal that's made it to midfield. To me, the one that still makes the most sense is to Portland for C.J. McCollum. I don't sense that there's been any traction on any kind of deal with Portland. I think Minnesota is probably the team that sort of covets Simmons the most. Do they have the pieces to interest Philly? I think if the answer to that question were yes, and they were pieces Minnesota would be willing to part with, I think that trade would have happened already. So I just don't see anything on the horizon. But as you said, Cassidy, the horizon changes and maybe it gets closer with every $500,000 or $300,000 or whatever it is that Ben Simmons forfeits here, because, his camp has remained staunch that he's willing to sit out the season if that's what it takes. Maybe I just can't wrap my head around lighting $32 million on fire. I just kind of remain a little bit skeptical that that's the case. But that's just me. My reporting says otherwise. We're just going to have to see what happens.
Mark, I've made this marriage is over. There's no marriage counseling. There's no doing it for the kids. Do you think, though, given the place we are, is this marriage salvageable in any way?
Nah, man, get the divorce lawyer in, sign the papers and get it going. And I'm hearing there's nothing brewing. But, to me, this is an interesting time for a couple Western Conference teams, as Zach mentioned. Portland, Minnesota, Sacramento, get in the mix for this. Spurs, New Orleans. We're talking about franchises who can't convince free agents to run there because they're not the sexy place to go. They need something to get into that playoff mix, to get to that team to the next level. I think it's time for one of these mid-level Western Conference franchises to be aggressive, be creative, figure out a way to get Ben Simmons. Look, I'm one of those people, man, I don't put too much on how somebody played in the postseason. I know what happened, but he's still an all-star. He's still one of the top defensive players in the league. He's still one of the best players in the league. I still think Ben Simmons has a lot of great basketball left ahead, and it's time for one of these smaller Western Conference franchises to step up and get this big deal going.
I hear you, Mark. But this whole segment, we've talked about Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons. Does a Kyrie Irving for Ben Simmons trade solve everyone's problems? Right. Exhale.
I don't know, because here's the thing with Kyrie that's I think is going to continue. Look, I'm in the Bay Area, San Francisco. Kyrie ain't playing here, and I wonder as the season progresses, are there going to be more NBA cities that say, look, we're going to do what San Francisco did, and you got to be fully vaccinated to perform here. And so I don't know that the road gets easier. I think the road gets tougher. For the Nets, sure, but that's not why Durant went there. That's not why Harden went there. So are those guys going to be happy, especially when Kevin just signed a big deal, probably thinking he was going to play with Kyrie for years? It's extremely complicated. So, no, I don't think that does solve the problem.
Look, the Eastern Conference is going to be competitive this year, and it's not going to be short on drama, that's for sure. Meanwhile, on the West Coast, are you having trouble ranking a team of future Hall of Famers that happen to play in Los Angeles? We have a tier for that later on the show. You're watching The Jump. Back after the bit.
That's it.
Make repertoires. Here's Jalen Green putting Kyle Kuzma on skates before hanging in the air. The tough finish, Mark. Expectations for Jalen in year one.
Man, I saw this back at Prolific Prep in Napa. This is new. I'm just surprised he's able to implement it this quick. But remember, he was in the G League, so he already knows the speed of the NBA.
Yeah, they're excited about him in Houston.
Rockets are very excited.
Yes. Jinx.
Very excited. He's going to get every opportunity he wants to get the ball, shoot the ball, pass the ball. It's all him.
Yeah, he's going to make a case for Rookie of the Year, and he has a boulder chip on his shoulder. He has said many, many times that he wasn't picked number one overall. Miss clarity. Pacers Knicks. Taj Gibson goes to pack it and then met at the rim by both Indy centers. Zach, who should get the credit for this block? Sabonis or Turner?
That's a tough call. I think, Turner's going to get a lot of blocks, so a lot more blocks in the regular season. So let's give it to Domas. He was closer to the rim. He was the last line of defense. Give it to him, and as Quinn Buckner would say, that was some smothered chicken at the rim. Pacers fans will get that joke.
Hey, you know what? Let's not sleep on these Pacers, too. If they're healthy, they're going to be something to deal with.
Absolutely.
They're very, very interesting with Sabonis healthy. He has to be healthy, though.
Same with Karis LeVert. I'm excited to see what he can do this season. Make Demetrius Jamel Morant. Did you guys know that was his full name?
Yeesh.
He wasted no time in reminding people what he can do in the Grizz preseason debut. Pair of huge slams, Dennis Patton trying to dunk over a 7-footer but gets fouled play. Mark, is he the most exciting player in the NBA? Yes, I asked that question.
Shout out to his father, T, and his wife for coming up with that unique name, but he's getting there. I think the thing with Memphis is I wonder if they took a step back roster-wise. So, if anything, we may not see a lot of this excitement if their team's not successful.
That's fair. But, they need – look, they exceeded expectations last year. Let's see if they can build on it. Make changes. Listen.
Lowry in the defense by DeRozan this time. Nice lead pass for Caruso. Back to DeRozan!
Oh, I'm telling you, there's going to be a lot of that this year, Bulls fans. Get hyped. The hype is real. This ain't last year's Bulls. It's not last year's Bulls, ladies and gentlemen.
Stacey King with the shy slamma-jamma on the call. Zach, where do the Bulls rank for you in league pass rankings, and why is it number 1?
First of all, Stacey King is a big part of their league pass rankings appeal.
Yes.
He's one of the funniest guys doing TV analysis. I think they're going to be a top 8 or 10 league pass rankings. You can't put them ahead of like Brooklyn, the Lakers, all these star-studded teams everyone's excited to watch. The Zion show in New Orleans is going to be up there. The Bulls, with Lonzo dishing it around like that and Zach LaVine dunking on everybody, they're going to be fun to watch.
Say more, Zach.
Give me that hot sauce, Stacey King.
Right, exactly. Look, Chicago ended up winning that game by 36. So let's delve into the Bulls just a little more. Yes, it was a preseason game, okay, but it has a lot of Bulls fans excited. Take a look at the box score. DeRozan, Vucevic, Lonzo, LaVine, and Caruso all with nice nights in limited action. Zach, again to you, are the Bulls a playoff team?
Hold up. Cassidy, did we just put up plus-minus stats from a preseason game?
Yeah, we did.
Is that what just happened?
We did.
Have you called the mayor of Chicago personally to start scheduling the championship parade because of the game last night?
I'm saying.
My God.
You don't see red? I see red.
The Bulls are a playoff team. The Bulls are a playoff team, to answer your question. But if you're asking me to predict, I think they have to go through the play-in tournament to get there, because I think the East is pretty loaded. The exception is if Philly just has a catastrophic fall because the Simmons thing blows up and they don't get anything for him, whatever. I think that opens a spot in that top 6. So Bulls, yes, in the playoffs, but have to go through the play-in to get there as of today.
Mark, I just need to get Zach's.
No.
Yeah,
Look,
go ahead.
Making the playoffs, go get your Caruso jersey, Cassidy. Let's remember, they got 3 All-Stars there. We don't give Vucevic enough credit for being the double-double monster and the special big guy he is. And you got, obviously, LaVine is coming back, All-Star, and DeRozan's got, you talk about chip on his shoulder. I know DeMar has a chip on his shoulder. To me, the biggest question with them is the entire supporting cast. I definitely like Caruso and some of their young guys, but I like this Bulls team. I'm not saying I think they're going to be around 5 or 6. I really think this team's going to be pretty good.
Yeah, and the addition of Lonzo Ball, like, again, it's preseason, but he's looking happy out there, and Zach and the rest of his teammates love playing with him and talking about his passes. And look, Zach LaVine said we've been playing this way in practice, and it looks like this. They're looking to put on a show every time they're out there on the court. Friday, they welcome the Pelicans in town in October 20th. They're on the road to open the season against the Pistons. So, league pass alert. They're there.
Cass. You know you're excited.
No, I'm not. I'm just stone-faced. The season is here, though, people. Thursday, we'll have our first NBA preseason game. The Heat are in Houston to take on Jalen Green and the Rockets at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific on ESPN2 and the app. One app, one tap. Coming up, we'll take a peek at Zach's piece on ESPN Plus right now, outlining which tier each team falls in and where he has the Lakers might surprise you. That's ahead on The Jump after the break. What needs to happen for them to enter one of the top 2 tiers?
First of all, let's dial it back a little bit. The Nets, well, at full roster strength, we'll see what happens with that. The Nets are incredible, and the Bucks just won the championship, and I think shed a lot of the sort of caution and the inconsistency that have plagued them in the past. They're a confident bunch now, so they deserve to be up there. The Lakers is just a matter of, look, are LeBron and AD going to be healthy when it matters? If so, then they're probably inching up there. Can they figure out the Russ fit? That's going to be a season-long project. And then around AD at center, who are the other two players? Can they find enough shooting? Can they find enough defense? Because remember, the one constant through line since Frank Vogel took over, including last year even when everyone was injured, this is a great defensive team. But their defense has taken a hit with Danny Green gone, KCP gone, Alex Caruso gone. The supporting defensive players have taken a hit. Can they build a great defense around that roster? Is LeBron number 2 all-time in minutes? Can he carry a defense along with AD into that top 5 territory? If they start answering those questions, they could be in a tier right with anybody. That's how good LeBron and AD are.
Mark?
Well, Zach, I don't envy you on putting this together, bro. This is hard. And when I think about the East, I think one team that we'll end up talking about is the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum is buffed up. He's coming off that Olympic experience, and I also got to visit with Jaylen Brown out here at Cal. He's healthy and ready to go. So I think Boston is certainly capable of making some noise. And then in the West, boy, Zach, I mean, there are 6 teams that have a shot at ending up winning this thing. And obviously health has a lot to do with it. But, Lakers, of course, are number 1. Suns, Denver, the Warriors, once they get Clay and Wiseman back, and the Warriors have a great bench. We can't not talk about the Clippers. Utah, I mean, there's so many teams in the West that could end up on top. Obviously, health is paramount, but to me, there's 6 teams that legitimately have a shot in the Western Conference to end up being in the finals.
Well, speaking of that, Zach, you had last year's Western Conference champs in that same tier with the Lakers. What do the Suns need to do, in your mind, to get back to the finals?
No shame in that. I mean, the Lakers are awesome. If you put the Lakers and the Suns head-to-head, the Lakers have the 2 best players in that head-to-head matchup, and the Jazz in that tier are awesome too. I think the Suns just have to count on the only real weapon they have is 3 of our 4 best players and maybe 5 of our 7 best players are young. And they should all keep getting better, including Devin Booker. But you throw Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, Cam Johnson. Internal development is the Suns' roadmap to going up a level even higher. People are dismissing their chances to make the finals again. And I get why. Mark just said the West is loaded, the Lakers reloaded, and all of that. But with Jamal Murray injured and Kawhi Leonard injured and Klay Thompson recovering from injury, there's still weird windows all around the West. Like, don't dismiss the Suns. They're a really, really good team as long as Chris Paul stays healthy.
Mark, do you have confidence in Phoenix?
Yeah, I do. I talked to Chris recently, and he felt like this finals experience, which also was a new experience for him, took this team to another level. And they got a chip on their shoulder, too, because, as Zach said, nobody believes that they could repeat. Ayton, he's a guy to watch, man. Hopefully for him, this contract situation doesn't sidetrack him mentally, and he uses it as fuel more than fight. I'm sure he's upset, and we'll see how that all plays out. And so to me, that's my biggest worry about the Suns right now is how DA responds to not getting this contract and perhaps playing a whole season without a new one.
Yeah, an October 18th deadline to sign that rookie contract extension. Zach, you talked about what a massive season this is for Utah also in your article. What needs to happen for the Jazz to finally put it all together when it matters most?
You look at their last 4 playoff eliminations. Every year the Jazz end the playoffs with a bad taste in their mouth. The first 2 losses to the James Harden Rockets where their offense was horrible. They couldn't make an open 3. Okay, they go out and sign Bojan Bogdanovic, Jordan Clarkson, juice up the offense. The next 2, they blow a 3-1 lead against Denver in the bubble and a 2-0 lead against the Clippers last year with Kawhi Leonard injured. Now, Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell also hobbled and injured for that series, but still. And they did it because their defense, the bedrock of their team, the foundation of their team, built around the 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, it fell apart. And so you have to ask yourself, has Utah solved that problem? And I don't know that they've upgraded the perimeter defense around Gobert enough. I mean, that was their real undoing against the Clippers, that they could not keep Reggie Jackson, Paul George, Terrence Mann. They could not keep those guys in front of them that get in the lane, drive and kick for 3. And I think the other thing is, teams are not afraid to go small against them because Rudy Gobert does not punish small ball lineups except for the occasional offensive rebound. The Clippers were switching Reggie Jackson onto him, and Utah was not giving him the ball. In the Olympics, France was giving him the ball against mismatches in the post, and he was dunking on people. I think we need to see more of that so that teams can't go that super small alignment against Utah that's hurt them in the past.
What's your confidence level in Utah, Mark?
Mike Conley being healthy.
Fair.
It is funny because it seems like every Western team, there's some big health issue to worry about. If Mike could stay healthy, you know, they're so much better with him. And Donovan Mitchell is going to have to take it up to a higher level, a superstar level, and I think also try to get more of his teammates involved. So this is that team, man. Every year, they seem like it's going to be it. We're going to spend some time in Salt Lake, go up to Park City, enjoy the Wasatch Mountains. Falls apart. Somebody gets hurt. There's some catastrophe. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with Utah when it's all said and done, because if they stall again this season with their aggressive owner, with Dwayne Wade being there, I wouldn't be surprised if they'll make some changes.
Well, check out the rest of Zach's article on ESPN Plus, including the someone is falling into the play-in race tier, particularly interesting in the East. Meantime, Mark, appreciate you joining us. Look forward to seeing you more on NBA Countdown this season as well. Congrats on that. And you two have been busy, because here's what the Jump recommends for today. Mark Spears profiles NBA lane director Rick Famuyiwa and his process of creating the NBA's 75th anniversary piece. Extremely cool look at everything that went into this project. Thanks, Mark. McNutt, who is going to be busy tonight, as it is a big night. You're going to be on SportsCenter, you're going to be on SVP and the studio shows wrapping around both games tonight. So let's get into it. The top two teams in the WNBA are facing elimination, Monica. Let's start with the Las Vegas Aces, who are looking to avenge back-to-back blowouts in games 2 and 3. What do the Aces have to do to force a game 5?
Cass, look, I mean this seriously, but flat out wake up. This is a team that has completely ditched their identity. We got them on milk cartons in terms of what made them so successful during the regular season. They were one of the better defensive units in the squad or in the league this year, but they've allowed this Phoenix Mercury squad to score more than 90 points twice now, and they've lost by an average of more than 20 points in those ball games. They just flat out have not shown up. So obviously, step one is they've got to figure out a way to defend. In particular, Brittany Griner has had an absolute field day in this series, Cass. She's handling double teams like a pro. Her face-up game has been tremendous. So they've got to figure out a way to slow down the Mercury's offense firepower-wise. I don't expect Brianna Turner to have another 17 points in the first half. But offensively as well, they've just not been able to score the ball. I mean, they shot 31% and scored only 60 points last game. That's far below their season average. And so they've really got to wake up with some urgency on both sides of the ball. Yeah,
there's no more press and snooze. Or, I mean, you're just going to bed. You know, like the season's over.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap. In the other series, the Connecticut Sun, they'll look to a bounce back after losing a nail-biter in Game 3. Who has the advantage in Game 4?
I'm going to go with the Sun having the slightest advantage, Cass, and here's why. We have yet to see them play their best basketball. Game 2 was closer to that. We saw them anchor down with their defensive prowess. They held this Chicago Sky squad under 70 points, which is where they kept teams throughout the regular season and had the best points per game versus opponents overall in the season. But the momentum that the Sky have is a tremendous beast. And so I'm looking for DeWanna Bonner and Breon January, two players who have championship pedigree, having won championships with other organizations before they got to the Connecticut Sun, to really lead the charge. The best part about this series versus the other series is that all of these games have been competitive. So if the Connecticut Sun can make a few adjustments down the stretch and keep things close the way that they can, or the way that they have, I think they can pull this one out.
Well, history is on the line tonight for both the Aces and the Sun. If both the Sun and Aces were to lose their semifinal series, this would be just the second time the finals matchup didn't feature a team with a top 2 record. So, Monica, who has a better chance to avoid elimination in your mind?
Oh, man, this is tough. And I think There's one part, that stat is eerie, and of course the Sun and the Aces don't want to be on the wrong side of the history when it comes to that. However, it does speak to the growth of the league and the parity, and that more seeds are jumping up because teams have a wealth of depth. But I will give the slightest edge to the Sun, just because, as I mentioned, that series has been competitive. It has gone down to the wire in all 3 games thus far. I expect nothing less in Game 4. I think if Kurt Miller can make some different tweaks. Brianna Jones had a tremendous Game 2. She didn't play as many minutes in Game 3. Can she get back on the floor tonight? And quite honestly, quiet as it's kept, she was giving Candace Parker buckets in Game 1. Alyssa Thomas has been tremendous in her return for the Connecticut Sun. And so I think that they're closer in terms of making a few strategic tweaks that can put them on the other side with a W. And they would only need like 2 points or so, where the Aces got to cover up more than a dozen points at least.
Right. The WNBA is important. And tonight is an important night. Game 4 in the best of 5 WNBA playoff semifinals, win or go home game.